The red smudge wasn't large, but against the crisp white collar of Tom's dress shirt, it might as well have been a flashing neon sign. My fingers froze mid-motion as I was sorting laundry on our bed, the weight of the discovery making the bedroom suddenly feel airless. Cherry Bomb, my sister Emily's signature lipstick shade. I would recognize it anywhere after watching her reapply it countless times over family dinners, including the one we'd had just last night. "What are you doing with the laundry already?" "I told you I'd handle it this weekend," Tom said, appearing in the doorway of our bedroom, coffee mug in hand. His voice was casual, but something in his eyes flickered when he noticed what I was holding. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I rotated the collar toward him, my index finger pointing to the damning mark. "Care to explain this?" Tom's face cycled through expressions so quickly I almost missed them. Surprise, recognition, calculation, and finally settling on indignation. He stepped forward, setting his coffee on the dresser with a sharp clink. "It's nothing, Sarah. Emily gave me a hug when I dropped her off last night, that's all. You know how she is with the cheek kisses and hugs." He reached for the shirt, but I pulled it back. "A hug doesn't leave lipstick on your collar, Tom." My voice was steadier than I expected, given the thundering of my heart. She was emotional about the apartment hunting. She hugged me tight and was crying a little. Her face must have brushed against my collar. He ran his hand through his hair, his towel when he was nervous. After 12 years of marriage, I knew all his habits. "Why are you making this into something it's not?" I dropped the shirt into the laundry basket and walked to the bathroom without another word. Behind me, I heard him sigh dramatically, playing the role of the wrongfully accused husband. I closed the door and leaned against it, my mind racing. Emily had been staying with us for 3 weeks since her breakup with Jason. 3 weeks of her lingering glances at Tom across the dinner table. 3 weeks of hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. That evening, as I prepared dinner, my phone chimed with a text from Emily. "Thanks for lending me your husband last night. We have such a special connection. He's so understanding about everything I'm going through." The knife I was using to chop onions paused mid-slice. Special connection? The wording felt deliberate, almost taunting. Emily and I had always been close despite the 4-year age gap, but competitive streaks ran through our relationship. She'd borrowed my clothes without asking throughout high school, dated my prom date the summer after I went to college, and now she was... What exactly? The thought was too painful to complete. I texted back a simple, "No problem," and set my phone down, trying to focus on cooking rather than the knot forming in my stomach. When Tom came home, he kissed my cheek distractedly before heading to shower. I noticed he kept his phone in his hand the entire time, unusual for a man who typically tossed it on the counter the moment he walked in. After dinner, he claimed he needed to check some work emails. I watched from the kitchen as he angled his body away from me on the couch, his thumbs typing rapidly on his phone screen, a small smile playing on his lips. "Is Emily having any luck with apartment hunting?" I asked casually, sliding onto the couch beside him. Tom jumped slightly, quickly locking his screen. I'm not sure. You should ask her. I thought you were helping her look. That's why you drove her home last night, right? To discuss some listings in her neighborhood. Right, yeah. Nothing promising yet." He stood abruptly. "Actually, I forgot to send an important email. I'll be in the office for a bit." That night, I lay awake beside Tom, listening to his even breathing. Sleep eluded me as memories resurfaced. Emily's arm lingering on Tom's shoulder at Christmas. Them laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Tom offering to drive Emily places when she's perfectly capable of driving herself. Had I been blind or simply unwilling to see? The next morning, I noticed Tom had changed his phone password. 4 years, it had been our anniversary date. A fact he'd shared willingly when we first married. I watched him unlock it, his body turned away, fingers moving in a pattern I couldn't decipher. When he left his phone to shower, I tried our anniversary combination. Incorrect. Our house number. Incorrect. His birth date. Nothing. That afternoon, I called Emily about our upcoming family brunch. "Looking forward to seeing you Sunday," I said, keeping my tone light. "Tom mentioned you two had a good talk during the drive home." "Oh, did he?" Her voice held an odd note, almost smug. "Yes, Tom's always been such a good listener. Sometimes I think he understands me better than anyone. Pause. Even better than Jason ever did." The implication hung in the air between us. My sister was marking territory that happened to be my marriage. That's what brothers-in-law are for, right? I replied, my knuckles white around the phone. Emily laughed, a sound that once brought me comfort but now scraped against my nerves. Sure, Sarah. Brothers-in-law. That weekend, I noticed Tom checking his phone constantly during our usual Saturday morning coffee ritual. When it chimed with a text, he stood and moved to the kitchen to read it, his back to me. A minute later, he announced he needed to run an errand he'd forgotten about. On Saturday morning? I questioned. Just a quick hardware store run. The sink in the guest bathroom is dripping again. He didn't meet my eyes as he grabbed his keys. The guest bathroom, where Emily was staying. The sink that had been working perfectly when I used it yesterday. After he left, I found myself standing in our bedroom, staring at his dresser. We'd never been the type of couple to snoop through each other's things, but the crimson stain had changed everything. I pulled open his drawer and methodically checked pockets, finding nothing until I reached his navy blazer. Inside was a movie ticket stub from Wednesday night, when he told me he was working late on a proposal. Sleep didn't come at all that night, my mind constructing and demolishing theories about what was happening in my own home, under my own roof with my own husband and my own sister. The two people I trusted most in the world now represented my greatest uncertainty. The crimson discovery on Tom's collar wasn't just a lipstick stain, it was the first visible crack in the foundation of everything I thought I knew. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them with only suspicions and a lipstick stain. I would be methodical, gathering evidence, watching patterns and piecing together the truth. If my world was going to shatter, I wanted to know exactly why and how long the cracks had been forming. As Tom slept beside me, blissfully unaware of my resolution, I stared at the ceiling and began to plan. My investigation began with small steps. After Tom left for work Monday morning, I sat at our kitchen table with a notepad, outlining what I knew versus what I suspected. One lipstick stain and changed phone passwords weren't enough. I needed concrete evidence before confronting either of them. I started by checking our shared calendar on the refrigerator. Tom had marked several late meetings over the past month, significantly more than usual. I copied down the dates, noticing they often fell on Wednesdays and Fridays. That afternoon, I made an excuse to stop by Tom's office to drop off the lunch he'd forgotten. His assistant Jennifer greeted me warmly. "He's just stepped out for lunch with the Hendricks account," she said apologetically. "That's strange," I replied, keeping my voice casual. "He didn't mention that this morning." Jennifer looked uncomfortable. "Actually, it was pretty last minute. He left about 20 minutes ago." I thanked her and turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, how did that big presentation go last Friday? Tom was so nervous about it." Jennifer's brow furrowed. "Friday? There wasn't any presentation last Friday. It was pretty quiet actually. Tom left early around 3. My heart thudded against my ribs as I drove home. Last Friday, Tom had texted that he'd be home late due to a client presentation. He hadn't arrived until after 8. At home, I made a decision I never thought I'd make in my marriage. I logged into our joint bank account and began scrutinizing recent transactions. Among the usual purchases were several charges from restaurants I didn't recognize, all located within blocks of Emily's new apartment. Each charge showed lunch for 2, on days Tom claimed to be working through lunch to catch up on projects. My hands trembled as I printed the statements. Not only was he lying about his whereabouts, but he was also spending our money wining and dining my sister. The next morning after Tom left, I called in sick to the clinic where I worked as a nurse practitioner. As soon as Emily left for her job interview, I slipped into the guest room. I felt like an intruder in my own home as I carefully looked through her belongings. In her nightstand drawer, beneath a stack of magazines, I found a small journal. My conscience screamed as I opened it, but my need for truth overwhelmed my guilt. Most entries were mundane, but one from 3 weeks ago caught my eye. "Saw T again today. Still the same chemistry after all these years. He doesn't look at us the way he looks at me. Never has." My vision blurred. Teens, Tom and Sarah. My sister had been seeing my husband before she even moved in with us. The betrayal cut deeper than I imagined possible. That evening, Emily arrived home first. I was chopping vegetables for dinner when she breezed into the kitchen. "How was the interview?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "It went well," she said, grabbing a carrot from the cutting board. "Though I'm not sure I want to commit to anything local yet." I set down my knife. No. I thought finding a job here was the whole point of moving back. Emily leaned against the counter, studying me. Plans change. Besides, it's nice being close to family again. She smiled in a way that never reached her eyes. Tom's been so helpful showing me around since I've been gone so long. Has he? I concentrated on slicing an onion, welcoming the excuse for watery eyes. That's thoughtful of him. He knows what I like, she said, her voice carrying a double meaning that made my skin crawl. Always has. Before I could respond, we heard Tom's key in the lock. Emily straightened up, smoothed her hair, and applied a fresh coat of her signature red lipstick right there in our kitchen. The deliberate timing wasn't lost on me. During dinner I watched them carefully. To the untrained eye, nothing seemed amiss. But I caught every lingering glance, every accidental brush of hands when passing dishes, every inside joke I wasn't part of. Remember that Italian place we tried last week, Em? Tom asked casually. Sarah, you'd love their seafood pasta. I froze mid-bite. Last week? When did you two go to an Italian restaurant? Tom's fork paused halfway to his mouth. When I was helping Emily with apartment listings. I mentioned it, didn't I? No, I said quietly. You didn't. An uncomfortable silence fell. Emily jumped in. It was just a quick lunch while we were out. Nothing special. Later that week, our neighbor Diane mentioned seeing Tom's car parked near the riverfront park on a Tuesday afternoon, a time he should have been at work. The park was a popular spot for couples, with secluded benches overlooking the water. At the family gathering that weekend to celebrate our parents' anniversary, I became hyper-aware of every interaction between Tom and Emily. When Mom asked everyone to gather for photos, I noticed Tom position himself near Emily instead of by my side as he normally would. During dinner, they sat across from each other, their eyes meeting over candlelight in silent communication. Dad pulled out old family albums after dessert. As we flipped through vacation photos from years ago, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. In several pictures from the summer before I started dating Tom, he and Emily appeared in the background together, standing closer than casual acquaintances would. You two knew each other before Tom and I met? I asked, pointing to a beach photo where they sat together on a dock. Emily laughed lightly. Of course. Tom was friends with Jason in college. We all hung out sometimes. You never mentioned that, I said, looking between them. Tom shrugged. It never seemed important. It was just a few times at group events. But the photos told a different story. One where they seemed very comfortable together, with Emily wearing the same adoring expression I recognized from our current family dinners. The seeds of suspicion had grown into fully formed plants, their tendrils wrapping around my heart and squeezing tight. There was a history here I knew nothing about, connections forged long before I entered the picture. As I drove us home that night, with Tom unusually quiet beside me, one question kept circling in my mind. How long had I been the outsider in my own marriage? The silence in our car that night felt suffocating. When we arrived home, Tom mumbled something about needing to check work emails and disappeared into his office. I sat alone in our kitchen, the family photos from earlier haunting me. There was more to this story, a buried past I needed to uncover. The next morning, I waited until Tom left for work before making my move. His laptop remained on his desk. He rarely took it to the office, preferring to use his work computer there. We had always known each other's passwords. It was part of the trust we'd built. I typed in his usual password, but access was denied. Another wall erected between us. I tried several variations of dates important to us before remembering his mother's birthday, the only other password he occasionally used. The screen unlocked, revealing his desktop. My hands trembling slightly, I opened his email. I told myself this invasion of privacy was justified given the circumstances, but guilt still gnawed at me. I searched for Emily's name, expecting to find recent exchanges. What I discovered instead left me breathless. Years of emails, dating back to before Tom and I were even married. I clicked on one from 8 years ago. I think about that weekend at the lake all the time. I know we agreed it's better this way, but sometimes I wonder what might have been. Tom. I scrolled through more messages, each one more damning than the last. They had apparently dated briefly in college, broken up, then reconnected just before Tom and I met. The emails painted a picture of a relationship that never truly ended, just went dormant for periods before flaring up again. The most recent exchange had started 3 months ago. Tom, Jason and I are done. For real this time. I'm thinking of moving back. What do you think? His response came the same day. I think you should come home. It's been too long. Their correspondence continued, discussing her move, how they would manage seeing each other, and eventually her temporary stay at our house. It had all been orchestrated, a plan months in the making while I remained oblivious. I closed the laptop and sat back feeling physically ill. My sister and husband had been carrying on an emotional affair throughout my entire marriage. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough I could barely comprehend it. I needed an outside perspective, someone who knew us both but might have insights I lacked. I called Jessica, a friend who had known Tom since before I met him and had become my friend too over the years. We met at a cafe across town, away from anyone who might know us. Jessica looked concerned as I slid into the booth across from her. "Sarah, you look terrible. What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I need to ask you something, and I need absolute honesty." When she nodded, I continued, "Did Tom and Emily ever date? Before Tom and I got together?" Jessica's expression shifted from concern to discomfort. She looked down at her coffee. "Sarah. Please, Jess. I need to know." She sighed heavily. "Yes. They were together for almost a year in college. It was pretty serious from what I gathered. Why didn't anyone ever tell me? Tom asked us not to mention it. He said it was over, that it would just create awkwardness for no reason." Jessica reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What's this about, Sarah?" I told her everything, the lipstick, the emails, the secret meetings. As I spoke, Jessica's expression darkened. "There's something else you should know," she said when I finished. "Emily's divorce. It wasn't just finalized recently like she claimed. She and Jason have been separated for almost a year. The divorce was completed nearly 2 months before she moved back. This new deception hit me hard. Emily had deliberately misled me about her situation to create a reason to stay with us. Everything had been calculated. After meeting with Jessica, I drove to the county courthouse. Public records confirmed what Jessica had told me. Emily's divorce had been finalized 10 weeks before she showed up at our doorstep claiming she needed a place to stay while her recent breakup was being legally processed. On a hunch, I checked her previous address using the divorce documents. She had lived in an apartment complex downtown, the lease for which wasn't set to expire for another 3 months. She hadn't needed a place to stay at all. She had chosen to insert herself into our home. That evening, I searched our attic for Tom's old college belongings, hoping to find further evidence of their relationship. In a dusty box labeled university stuff, I found what I was looking for, a small wooden box containing mementos. Inside were movie ticket stubs, dried flowers, and photographs of Tom and Emily together, looking very much in love. There were handwritten letters from Emily professing her feelings, dated just weeks before Tom and I had our first date. The most disturbing item was a small velvet ring box. Inside was an engagement ring with a note, "For when the time is right. Love, T." He had planned to propose to my sister. My mind reeled with questions. Had he settled for me when things didn't work out with Emily? Had I been his second choice all along? I was replacing everything when I noticed another box pushed far back in the corner. Inside were more recent items. Birthday cards from Emily to Tom with intimate messages, a hotel room key card dated just 6 months ago, and a USB drive. I took the drive downstairs and plugged it into my laptop. It contained dozens of photos of Emily and Tom together at various locations over the years. Weekend trips they had both told me were work-related or visits to friends. In many photos they looked like a couple, with Tom's arm around her waist or her head on his shoulder. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. While organizing old mail, I found a credit card statement addressed to Tom at our home for an account I didn't know existed. When I called the company pretending to be checking on recent charges, they confirmed the card had been used regularly at hotels, restaurants, and for gifts, including jewelry from a high-end store just before Valentine's Day. A gift I had never received. The buried past wasn't just a brief college relationship as Jessica had described. It was a parallel life Tom had maintained throughout our marriage, with my own sister as his accomplice. Every smile, every family dinner, every holiday, all tainted by their secret. As night fell, I sat alone in our darkened living room, the evidence spread before me like the pieces of a horrific puzzle finally taking shape. I needed professional help to see just how deep this betrayal went. Despite my evidence, part of me still clung to the desperate hope that I was misinterpreting something, constructing a nightmare from coincidences and misunderstandings. The next morning, I called in sick again and drove to a private investigator's office I'd found online. The nondescript building housed several small businesses, providing anonymity I desperately needed. Martin Davis had the weathered look of someone who'd seen too many broken marriages. He listened without judgment as I laid out my suspicions, occasionally jotting notes. "I need concrete evidence," I explained, handing him the folder containing my findings. "If I'm going to confront them, I can't leave any room for denial or manipulation." He nodded, studying the email printouts. "This is already substantive, but I understand. You want to be absolutely certain. Can you help me?" My voice cracked slightly. "Yes, ma'am. I can document their meetings, provide surveillance photos, and investigate financial connections. It'll take about a week and cost." "I don't care about the cost," I interrupted, sliding my personal credit card across his desk. "Just be discreet. They can't know they're being watched." Over the next week, I maintained a facade of normalcy at home. I smiled through dinners, pretended to believe Tom's excuses about working late, and acted oblivious to Emily's thinly veiled comments. Inside, I was hollowed out, going through motions that once held meaning. 7 days later, Martin called. "I have what you need. Can you come to my office?" The manila envelope he handed me contained dozens of high-resolution photographs. Tom and Emily entering a hotel downtown, holding hands in a park 3 towns over, kissing in his car outside her supposed apartment viewings. Each image struck like a physical blow, but I forced myself to examine them all. "They meet 3 times a week, usually during lunch or when he claims to be working late," Martin explained clinically. "The hotel visits are typically on Tuesdays and Fridays. They're careful. They arrive separately, leave separately, but I documented their movements." He handed me a second folder. "This contains financial information that might interest you." I opened it to find bank statements from an account I didn't recognize. A joint account in Tom and Emily's names, opened 6 months ago. Regular deposits from our shared savings had been flowing into it. "He's been diverting money?" My hands trembled. "About $500 a week. The account currently holds nearly $12,000. It was money we'd been saving for a down payment on a vacation cabin, a dream we talked about for years." Now I understood why Tom had been reluctant to move forward with the purchase, claiming we needed just a bit more saved. "There's more," Martin said gently. "Your sister's apartment? He's paying for it." The paperwork showed Tom had signed the lease as guarantor, making monthly payments from our joint account disguised as business expenses. Emily's story about apartment hunting had been completely fabricated. She already had a place, funded by my husband with our money. I thanked Martin and drove to a quiet spot overlooking the river to process what I'd learned. The web of deception went beyond their affair. They had been building a financial foundation together using my money, planning for a future that excluded me. That evening, I received a text from Jessica. "Just saw Tom's truck parked near Emily's apartment building. Are you okay?" I didn't respond. Instead, I used Tom's absence as an opportunity to dig deeper into our finances. In his home office, I discovered statements for a safety deposit box I didn't know existed. Another secret kept from me. The next day, I visited our bank, armed with our marriage certificate and joint account information. After some initial resistance, the manager allowed me to access our safe deposit box. Inside, I found legal documents, a draft separation agreement dated 3 months ago, prepared but not yet filed. Tom had been planning our divorce while maintaining our marriage, orchestrating his exit with careful precision. Also in the box was a small notebook containing loan calculations and property valuations. Our house, my car, his new truck. He had been assessing our assets, planning how to divide them. Most disturbingly, I found handwritten notes discussing how to minimize what I would receive in a settlement. I photographed everything with shaking hands before returning the items exactly as I'd found them. Outside, sitting in my car, I called Emily's ex-husband Jason. We had never been close, but I needed answers only he might have. "Sarah? This is unexpected," he answered, surprise evident in his voice. "I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Did your marriage end because of Tom?" The silence lasted so long I thought he might have hung up. Finally, he sighed heavily. I wondered if you'd ever figure it out. How long? I asked, my voice barely audible. Emily's been obsessed with Tom since college. When you two got engaged, she was devastated. Our marriage was her consolation prize. His bitter laugh held years of pain. She never stopped loving him. There were messages, secret meetings. I tried to make it work for years, but eventually, well, you can guess. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Over your sister and husband? His question hung in the air, unanswerable. Besides, Tom threatened legal action if I spread rumors about them. After thanking Jason, I made one final stop. A meeting with a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. I brought copies of everything I'd gathered. The attorney listened carefully, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. This is substantial evidence of financial infidelity as well as adultery, she confirmed. The diversion of marital assets to support the affair gives U.S. considerable leverage. I don't want a lengthy battle, I explained. I just want what's fair and to be done with this. With this documentation we can ensure that happens. I suggest documenting any additional assets before confronting them. They've been planning this for months. We need to be equally prepared. As I drove home, a strange calm settled over me. The web of deception they had woven was intricate and vast, but now that I could see its full pattern, it had lost its power to confuse me. Every thread connected to form a clear picture of betrayal. My next steps would need to be just as carefully planned as their deception had been. That night, as Tom slept beside me, a stranger wearing my husband's face, I stared at the ceiling and made my final preparations. There would be no tearful confrontations, no pleading for explanations. They had constructed their web with deliberate care. My escape would be equally deliberate. The morning light filtered through our bedroom curtains as I carefully slid out of bed, watching Tom's sleeping form. For 12 years I had woken beside this man, believing in the life we'd built. Now I looked at him and saw only the architect of my pain. Today would be the last time I'd see him sleep in our bed. I had planned this confrontation meticulously over the past week. Tom had a major client presentation today, one he couldn't miss. Emily was scheduled to come over for lunch to discuss apartment options. The timing was perfect. I prepared breakfast as usual, my movements mechanical but precise. When Tom emerged from the shower, I handed him coffee exactly the way he liked it. "You're up early," he commented, kissing my cheek absently. "Couldn't sleep," I replied truthfully. "Everything okay?" He glanced up from his phone, the question perfunctory. "It will be," I said, my voice steady. "Good luck with your presentation today." He looked momentarily surprised by my knowledge of his schedule but quickly recovered. "Thanks. Should be home around 6 unless things run late." "I'll be waiting," I promised. After he left, I methodically gathered the evidence I'd collected. Photos, financial records, emails, the draft separation agreement. I arranged everything in chronological order on our dining room table, creating a timeline of betrayal. Then I called Emily. "Can we make it earlier?" I asked. "I have something important to discuss." She agreed to come at 11, sounding curious but unsuspecting. While waiting, I packed a single suitcase with essential clothes and irreplaceable personal items. Photo albums from my childhood, jewelry from my grandmother, documents I couldn't replace. Everything else could be sorted later. When the doorbell rang, I took a deep breath and opened it to find Emily looking carefree in a sundress, her signature red lipstick perfectly applied. "You sounded mysterious on the phone," she said, brushing past me. "What's so important that—" She stopped abruptly when she saw the dining room table. "Sarah, what is all this?" Her voice held a note of wariness. 12 years of lies," I replied calmly. "Please sit down." To my surprise, she did. I remained standing, unwilling to position myself lower than her, even symbolically. "I know everything, Emily. About you and Tom. About the money he's been giving you. About your divorce being finalized months ago. About the apartment he's paying for. About your relationship before I met him." Her face cycled through expressions: shock, calculation, and finally a strange relief. "So now you know," she said, her voice almost triumphant. "He was mine first, Sarah. He's always been mine. And that justifies years of deception? Sleeping with your sister's husband. You took what should have been mine, she said, her composure cracking. He was going to propose to me before he met you. Did you know that? He had the ring and everything. I found it, I said quietly. Along with everything else you two tried to hide. She laughed bitterly. We've been in love since college. When we broke up, I thought it was over. Then he met you and suddenly you had everything I wanted. The proposal, the wedding, the house. But he never stopped loving me. Never. Her words were designed to wound, but I was beyond that pain now. And that makes what you did acceptable? We didn't plan this, she insisted. When my marriage to Jason fell apart, I reached out to Tom for support. One thing led to another. You planned everything, I corrected her. Your divorce was finalized nearly 2 months before you showed up claiming you needed a place to stay. You already had an apartment Tom was paying for. You deliberately moved back to pursue my husband. Her eyes narrowed. Fine. Yes, I came back for him. And he welcomed me back because he's never been truly happy with you. You were always second choice. The safe option when things got complicated between us. Each word struck like a slap, but I refused to show how deeply they cut. I've called Tom. He's on his way home. Her eyes widened in alarm. His presentation is less important than this, I finished for her. He should be here any minute. As if on cue, we heard his key in the lock. Tom walked in, looking confused and irritated until he saw Emily sitting at the table and the evidence spread before her. The color drained from his face. Sarah, what is this? He asked, his voice strained. The truth, I replied simply. Please join us. He approached cautiously, his eyes darting between us, assessing the situation. When he saw the surveillance photos, he cursed under his breath. How did you get these? He demanded. Does it matter? What matters is that I know everything. The affair, the secret account, the apartment, the divorce plans. All of it. Tom sank into a chair, suddenly looking deflated. I can explain. Don't insult me further, I cut him off. There's no explanation that changes what you've done. What you both have done. We were going to tell you, Emily interjected, reaching for Tom's hand across the table. After you drained our savings? After you filed the separation papers Tom's been drafting. I shook my head. You weren't going to tell me anything until everything was in place to leave me with as little as possible. Tom's head snapped up. How did you know about the papers? I know about the safety deposit box too. And the separate account. And the calculations about how to divide our assets. His shoulders slumped in defeat. What do you want, Sarah? Money? The house? The question was so coldly transactional it almost made me laugh. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them next week. I picked up my suitcase from where I'd placed it by the stairs. I'm leaving now. You two deserve each other. You're leaving. Tom looked genuinely surprised. Where will you go? That's no longer your concern, I replied. My lawyer will contact you about dividing our property. Until then, don't try to access our joint accounts. I've already frozen them. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and I'm taking the truck. Tom stood abruptly. My truck? You can't. The truck purchased with our joint savings while you were diverting funds to your love nest? Yes, I can. My car keys are on the counter if you need transportation. Without waiting for a response, I walked out, the spring sunshine feeling like a blessing on my face. Tom's new truck sat in the driveway. A $65,000 indulgence he'd insisted we could afford despite delaying our cabin plans. I slid behind the wheel, adjusted the seat, and placed my suitcase on the passenger side. As I backed out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of them in the doorway. Tom looking stunned, Emily with her arm wrapped possessively around his waist. They had each other now openly. And I had my freedom. I drove toward the coast, windows down, letting the wind wash away 12 years of deception. I had lost my husband and my sister in one blow, but reclaimed something infinitely more valuable, my dignity. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months I was breathing freely. I checked into a beachfront hotel 3 hours away, requested a room overlooking the ocean, and sent Tom a single text. The truck is payment for years of lies. Don't follow me. Then I silenced my phone, walked to the balcony, and watched the waves crash against the shore. Each wave retreated, but always returned with renewed strength. I would too.